What's up, football fans? So I just wanted to make a video comparing what many would would consider the Steelers' two greatest quarterbacks of all time, Terry Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger. So Terry Bradshaw started for the Steelers from 1970 to 1983. His games played 158. His record was 107, 51, and 0. In total, he threw 3,901 passes. He completed 2,051 of them for 27,989 yards. His passer complete ratio is 51.9%. His touchdowns were 212 total, and he threw 210 interceptions. He was sacked 307 times. His career passer completion ratio was 70.9 passer rating, and he won. Probably the best thing about Terry is that he quarterbacked the Steelers to 4 Super Bowl victories. Okay, now what about Ben Roethlisberger? Ben Roethlisberger played for the Steelers from 2004 to 2021. He played in 247 games. His record, 165, 81, and 1. He threw a total of 8,443 passes, and he completed 5,440 for 64,088 yards. His career pass percentage ratio, 64.4%. He threw 418 touchdowns to 211 interceptions. He was sacked 554 times. His career pass complete ratio was 94.3 passer rating. And he won 2 Super Bowls, and he lost 1. So I want to start this video off just by saying, I believe it's really hard to compare quarterbacks like Terry Bradshaw from the 1970s and from 1970s to early 80s to guys that played after 2000, for example. I mean, if you just look at the sheer number, let's take, for example, the sheer number of passes that Terry Bradshaw threw. In his entire career, Terry Bradshaw threw 3,901 passes. In Ben Roethlisberger's entire career, he threw 8,443 passes. So he doubled the amount of passes that Terry Bradshaw threw. So that shows you right there, there's a big difference in the era. That equated to more yards too. Once again, Terry Bradshaw, he never hit 30,000 yards. He had about 28,000 yards. Ben Roethlisberger, over 64,000. Okay, 2 areas that I see that Ben is even though he threw more passes, that I see Ben might be a pretty much better in, was the passer completion ratio. Terry Bradshaw completed 51.9% of his passes. And Ben, even though he doubled the amount of passes that Terry threw, he threw for 64.4% of his passes. So he had a higher completion ratio. Also, I'm looking at the number of touchdowns, the scoring. Terry Bradshaw threw 212 touchdowns, and he threw 210 interceptions. So, like, he was almost 1 for 1. For every touchdown he threw an interception. Ben was 418 touchdowns to 211 interceptions. So, for just under 2, he threw an interception. So he doubled his touchdowns to interceptions. His pass complete ratio was much higher than Terry Bradshaw's, 94.3, and Terry was 51.9. Now, many people would look at the Super Bowl rings and say, hey, Terry did win where it counted. When he got to the championship, he won. He was 4-0 in he won 4 Super Bowls. Ben was 2-1. So, like I said, it's really hard to compare these different quarterbacks because they play in different eras. The mentality of the head coaches was different back then. Football was more of a running game back then. But even though in today's game, Ben seems like his in certain areas he was more efficient in certain areas than Terry Bradshaw was. One of the factors, I think the passing game was more developed when Ben played as opposed to when Terry played. So who would you say out of these two where would you rate these guys, Ben Roethlisberger and Terry Bradshaw, as in Steelers history? What would you rate them? I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Thanks for listening. Keep loving that football.